more similarities with them as small American businesses than we ever dreamed possible. When I speak with our distributors at New Belgium's Distributor Council, they always say that they wished craft brewers knew more about their business realities. The three-tier system is an important part of our ability to have access to market. If you've been to Europe, where they typically use a tied house model, you know that that's true. Just as they'd like for us to know more about their businesses, there's a lot that we can teach them about beer and about our often alternative view when it comes to running our businesses and showing up in the marketplace. Lots of us are adding capacity right now, and if we're going to grow to 10, 20% or more, that's something that we have to do. And I admit, I worry for all of us about the pace and intentionality behind these moves. We get so many signals that we should grow fast, now. So I just want to hit this one straight because I know it's a difficult subject. As someone who is in the middle of putting on 700,000 barrels of capacity, I am not saying that other people shouldn't grow. In fact, we need for all of us to grow, not only because we're headed to beyond 10%, but also because it takes all of our individualistic and intriguing stories to grow the craft beer landscape. I'm also not saying that we have the perfect answer at New Belgium, or that we're not taken aback by the sheer enormity of it all, or that others are too small, or too undercapitalized, or too whatever. What I am saying, however, is that each of us needs to have a well-developed and honest plan, that we need to be intentional. If we're intentional about our expansions, we're asking questions like, what will my brand stand for in a faraway market? How will my brand be represented in the trade? What have I done to ensure quality? What is the purpose of growing into these markets? But back to my premise. Whatever any of us does, all of us are affected, both positively and negatively. Many of us remember 1997 when journalists and industry watchers seemed only too happy to pronounce that because craft had only grown by 2%, that the bloom was off the rose. We all want each of us to be successful. We are in this together. I talked about being intentional, and earlier I mentioned intriguing. And we'll also want to be sure that we are that, too. Journalists and bankers and other industry watchers often mention to me that they're impressed with the camaraderie and generosity that we express for one another as craft brewers. I always have this feeling of gushing pride because it's one of the things that I love most about us. We came to this big adventure from many different angles, and by watching others, an unwritten code, sheer delight in our peers, we all seem to know intuitively that nurturing our happiness quotient just feels right. And I also admit to some amount of looming dis-ease, like something different may be just on the other side of the horizon line. Resources will become tighter, for certain. Whether it's hops, or trained sales and brewery staff, or beer names, or distributor focus, or share of shelf space and customer enthusiasm, we're all likely to feel the pinch of all of this exuberance and marketplace flux. And it's human nature when one feels nervous or worried to defend oneself. I get that. And I beg you to do so in a measured and private way. Don't let your internal story run the show. Pick up the phone and have an honest conversation that starts with good intent. Aim for an outcome where everyone feels respected. For beer drinkers, it's kind of like when friends break up. They don't want to hear us talking smack about one another. They just want to go back to having fun. And we have so much possibility for having fun and being generous. So now we're almost at 7% share of the national market. We've more than doubled in 10 years. That may not seem like a lot if you look at ABI's ability to marshal their incredible resources against a beer like Shop Top and in the blink of an eye, have at least 1% of market share. But our influence is outsized for our growth rate. In 2003, let's just say that we were small enough and new enough that we don't really even know what our media hit rate was. Today, it's off the hook. Here's an interesting fact. Our attendance at CBC in 2003, 995 people. Today, we have over 6,400 people at this year's conference. Pretty incredible. 10 years ago, we were 1,400 breweries. Today, the vast majority of Americans live within 10 miles of a brewery, and we're 2,400 strong and growing. While that certainly indicates that we're not very efficient, it also underscores that we have fundamentally changed the culture of beer and brewing in America. That's you and me. That's everyone in this room. We did that. I think this industry has changed fundamentally in the last 10 years. The breadth and pace of portfolios bursting with new beers has been dizzying and also really fun. We're collaborating with one another in ways that were not typical even 5 years ago. These two phenomena have coincided with a profile as an industry and an enthusiasm by beer drinkers that is a far bigger story than just our growth numbers alone. Each informs the other. The brewery, Stone and Elysian, brewed a collaboration last year. It was a pumpkin, yam, fenugreek, lemon verbena beer, which in addition to a mashup of exotic ingredients resulted in the world's hardest to pronounce beer name. On the international front, Devil's Backbone, the much awarded brewery from Virginia, spent 5 weeks in Australia with Thunder Road Brewing in Melbourne, collaborating on something called the Devil's Thunder Down Under, which was a multi-country extravaganza primarily focused on hops. New Belgium and Allagash brewed 2 beers together, one in each of our breweries, using Bretta from one of us and Lactobacilli from the other, Owen Dandelion Greens and Belgian Endive. Both beers were aptly named Vrienden, which is Flemish for friends. These are great examples of innovation that happen because of enthusiasm for one another and for plying our craft. And I'm excited to think about all of the ways that we can continue to amuse and challenge ourselves in the future. We are proprietors of a subculture that is vibrant, vital, and quirky, just the way we like it. In so many ways, we've embraced innovation, not just in brewing, but in the way we show up as businesses. From fanciful facial hair to community philanthropy to environmental cutting-edge practices and employee ownership, we do really interesting things that turn conventional wisdom on its head. At Alaskan, they've pioneered a spent grain steam boiler process, where instead of drying and then shipping their spent grain all the way to Seattle, they've devised a way to dry and then use this brewhouse byproduct to power their brewery. They save shipping costs, which must have seemed ridiculous, and they're able to use a waste stream as fuel. That's an elegant solution. A 16-ton closed-loop geothermal field provides heat for the offices at Bell's Brewing. At FX Mat in Utica, they've just installed an anaerobic digester that will power about 40% of the brewery's needs from processed water nutrients and discharge significantly cleaner water to the city. New Belgium recently completed the final steps in a transitioning to 100% employee-owned company and also elected benefit corporation status. This allows our board of directors to take a broad swath of stakeholders into account when making decisions rather than looking solely at fiduciary measures to gauge our success and build our strategy. And in so many cities and towns in America, the locals look to their craft breweries for financial support, for beer, and for fundraising power. We give in our communities in a big, big way. We will get to 10%. We will no doubt grow well beyond that number. It will be exciting and nerve-wracking and a lot of work. And along the way, I hope we ask ourselves, in addition to craft market share, are we growing what we hope to grow? Will it make us smile about one another? Will we feel like we continue to challenge ourselves and to create new ways of thinking about beer and business and their respective place in the world? How can we create new models for a more interesting and sustainable future? And what will we have done to steward our natural resources and reduce our impact on the planet? You are an incredible force. We possess a beautiful power for an interesting future. All that we have done up till now would suggest that what we do will be cool and interesting and undeniably soul-satisfying. And I can't wait to watch it all unfold. Thank you so much.